will now call the hearing to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. This morning I'll be chairing the hearing. My name is Robert Hutchings. On my direct left is Ms. Billinghurst. On my far left is Mr. Phillick. Representing the Assessment and Taxation Department in the City of Winnipeg is Mr. Wong, and our secretary today is Ms. Sutherland. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by this Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questioning by the applicant and the panel members, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Again, each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket. Today, the session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. And please, can everybody make sure their cell phones are on complete silence, please. Katie, could you swear in the parties, please?
Please state your name.
Ken Wong.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please state your name. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Neufeld, Mr. Wong. First property on the docket is 316 Ross Avenue. We have two appeals for 2019 and 2020. I will do them individually for the record, please. So the first one is the 2019 year, file number 19-4929. And 316 Ross Avenue, we're dealing with a 2020 realty appeal. Mr. Wong, when you are ready, please.
We're going to do 2020 first and then 2019?
2019 first.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. The subject property is 316 Ross. The roll number is 130-990-71390. It's a residential apartment block that's 5 stories high. It was built, it has effective year built between from 1965 to 2018. There are 94 suites with 58 indoor parking stalls and 58 outdoor parking stalls. On page 13 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,149 to get a potential income of $1,296,000. We use a 2.8% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $1,260,000. And we use the 41% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $735,000. At the 5%, we have an estimated market value of $14,719,000, which is $156,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we applied are in line with what's on the market. On the bottom of page 4 are some expense comparables. Newer properties, like the subject property, typically have lower expenses. Typically in the maybe the high 30% range. The model is applied about 41% expense ratio in this case. On page 5 is information on how we derived our cap rates. see on the bottom of page 5, there's the multifamily cap rates, which range from 5 to 6.75, with the majority of them ranging between 5.25 and 5.5%. On page 6 are some cap rate sales. Ranging from 4% to 6.09%. On page 8 is a picture of the subject property. It's comprised of an older building on the right and a brand new building that is on the left. On page 9 is some information on the property. On page 10 are some pictures of the interior of the property. On page 11 is the permit that was taken up for the property. Project value of $9.8 million. On page 12 are market rents from CMHC. The subject property is comprised of 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. The market rents for a newer 2005 plus building is $1,191 for a 1 bedroom and $1,392 for a 2 bedroom. So the rents that we've used are in line with what the market is indicating. The property was built in 2018, so we don't have any actual income or expense information to go on. So we're relying on the market in order to try to estimate the value. So seeing as we are relying on the market, the rents that we've used are supported by the market, and the expenses that we've used are also supported by the market. The cap rate information that we've provided, they're not meant to be specifically comparable to the subject property, but they're meant to substantiate the accuracy of the model. But in this case, like the 333 Ward is a pretty good comparable at 5%, and it supports the 5% that we've applied for the subject property. So seeing as all the parameters are supported by the market, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $14,719,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, so just to confirm, this valuation was done all through your model?
Yes.
And you did mention that page 6, these displayed rates are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. I'm reading from this.
Yes, they're meant to substantiate the accuracy of the model.
And in this case, 4 of the 5 are post-reference, is that correct?
Yes. But Ward is not post-reference.
All right, since you brought up Ward, when was Ward constructed?
2006.
All constructed in 2006? It wasn't a conversion?
Ward?
Yeah, from the ground up new?
I believe, yeah.
Okay, and that's located south part of the city,
Yes.
south of St. Vital Center?
In the south part of the city, yes.
Does it say market area that the subject is in?
No, it is not.
And the method of determining whether 333 Ward, this potential cap rate, can you just describe how that was done?
Pardon me?
To calculate the 5% rate. It states in your report how it was done, but just verify that it was done by taking the mailer information?
I'm not, a colleague of mine stabilized the operating income and applied it against the sale price.
From the source material was the mailer, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Excuse me.
But the appraisal for 335 Ward utilized a 5% cap rate, and the sales that were used to estimate that cap rate indicated 5% as well. So it all seems to point to 5%.
I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Appraisal?
Yeah.
Is this in evidence?
No, it's not.
You have permission to quote from an appraisal? Does not the appraisal say that it is not to be distributed or communicated in any other manner without express written authority of the owner and the appraiser?
I'm not sure.
And for that particular appraisal you're discussing, what was the value on it? You brought it
18.8 million.
18.8, and it sold for
18 million.
18 million. So 5% rate would be 18.8, but it sold for 18, so that appraisal does not substantiate 5% then, does it?
What I'm saying is that the appraisal utilized 5%, and there were 18 sales that were that indicated 5%. That is what I'm saying.
So an appraisal that you can't produce, that you're just gonna discuss, that didn't contemplate the sale, somebody else said it was that, and you're relying on that instead of the actual sale. Did you calculate what the actual sale on that income you're quoting would have been?
My colleague calculated 5%.
On 18,800,000.
No, on the sale price.
From, now, from the income and expense forms?
And also, pardon me? I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know. And if it had been, when was that income and expense form produced? What was its effective date?
The effective date of what?
Oh, the income and expense form on 333 Ward.
Like I said, I don't know.
You don't know. And this, was it a year prior to the sale? Or was it made on the sale date? Do you know that?
I don't know.
Now, you have some expense comparables. These, I take it, you've put the year built here. These are all original year built? These aren't conversions, or are any of these conversions?
These are year built.
Year built. So the subject property is a bit of a hybrid, originally built in 1905 with an addition built in 2018, correct?
Yes.
And what relevance is a brand new property to a converted property?
Because the majority, if you look on my page, 8, you'll see that the majority of the subject property is a brand new build.
Well, the majority is, you're saying, well, again, of what relevance is that? How are you accounting for a portion of the building that's older and obviously more costly to maintain?
The new construction is comprised of a totally new building and a total renovation of the 1905 building, and so I feel it is pretty close.
Okay, are expenses related to the income then? They're a percentage of the income, correct?
Yes?
Now, in the case of your comparables, are any of them financed under sorry, I don't know the name of the program, Affordable Housing Program, requiring a certain amount of units below a certain rental rate, to your knowledge?
I'm not sure.
How about the subject?
I'm not
Are you
sure.
aware that they have set aside units to fall below a certain rental rate in order to qualify for assisted financing?
I'm not sure.
Well, if that's the case, and you have one comparable you're using for a ratio, who have no restrictions on their rental rate versus the subject who does have a restriction on the rental rate, should not again, of what relevance are these comparables? They're not the same thing, are they? They're not the same financial material. They're not composed of the same financial criteria, are they?
I mean, if you'd like to present something that indicates that their income is lower than what we presented, you can do that.
They're your comparables. I'm asking you if, to your knowledge, any of them had provisions to provide below market rental rates for affordable housing. And your answer was you don't know. Is that correct?
I don't know. When I look at the market information, like, we don't have any pre-reference period information, subject information to rely on, so we're relying on the market. The market information that we presented is supported, and that's how we value it.
On your rent comparables, numbers 1 to 4, are the effective, are the original ages as indicated here, being 1986, 2000, 2013, and 1970?
I believe so, yes.
And the subjects is 1905, with an addition in 2018?
Like I said, when you look at the overhead shot on my page 8, the majority of the building with the white roof is a new construction. The building right beside it has been fully renovated.
So where is this breakdown that breaks down the renovated apartment to the new construction? Do you do that?
We've blended it.
Okay, and you haven't shown that work, have you? The market area of your rent comparables, are you suggesting that the market area is the same as the subject?
No. I'm saying that they are comparable based off of their age and construction.
Did you have an opportunity to review the post-reference rental rate information on the subject? Have you received it yet?
I didn't really look at it too much because I felt it was a post-reference.
Did you received it?
For 2018?
Yes.
I do not know.
Did you look at any other approaches to value, such as the cost approach?
No. I did look at the permit value.
Which is substantially lower than your assessed value, is it not?
We do have it at 9.8 million. I did look into a little bit, and they did spend approximately $1 million for the land, and that puts that value at about 10.8 million. When we're looking at the cost approach, they typically include some sort of incentive for the developer in terms of a profit. If they've spent $10.8 million on the property, the developer would probably expect it to be worth more than $10.8 million. They would expect some sort of a return on it. They're not going to spend $10.8 million on it and expect it to be worth $10.8 million. So
Where
I
is this
felt-
theory coming from? Are you supporting that with any sort of standardized theory
Well, it's
embraced by
the,
the Appraisal Institute or the IAAO?
it was part of a project an appraisal project that I did for my demonstration report, and part of the cost was entrepreneurial profit, and so it seems to fall. If you include some entrepreneurial profit, like I said, if they spent $10.8 million on the property, they would expect, I don't know, maybe a 20% return, or I'm not sure, but if you include some sort of entrepreneurial profit into their $9.8 million plus their $1 million for the land, it would be pretty close to the $14.7 million that we've applied it at. And a lot of the times, the permit values that are declared, it's actually lower than what they actually spent.
Have you substantiated that with some facts? Or that's just your...
It's my experience.
Okay. Now, what happens when the developer is the owner? Aren't his profits and his return on his, coming from his rents, isn't that the reason they make this investment?
It's difficult for me to say.
Well, it wasn't difficult for you to imagine an entrepreneurial profit when you don't even know if one existed.
Well,
So
that was
my
based
que-
off of,
my
that was
next-
based off of a project and the cost approach that you had mentioned.
No, it's your costs, not mine. I just asked you on the approach. You thought it was an entrepreneurial profit. My follow-up question was, when the developer is the owner, do not his profits come from the revenue he's going to generate as a rental project?
Potentially.
Did you consider validating your capitalization rates with the, I'm sorry, are you familiar with the mortgage equity method of capitalization?
No. We're using the direct capitalization method.
Okay. So at any time, was any attempt made to look at mortgage equity?
No. Not to my knowledge.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Marla, any questions of the assessor?
No.
Thank you. Robert?
Just one thing for clarification. On page 9,
Yes.
this is the new building?
Yes,
With
on the far
It
right.
has 3 colors
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
And then, is this building here the other building? The one to the left?
Yeah. That would be, yeah, I guess that building would be this building.
And yet that building looks almost as big as,
It's skewed. It's like this part of it is stretched out, and this part of it is shrunken down. Yeah.
and it was totally renovated, so the suites in here would look similar to the ones that are in here?
I think no, they wouldn't. I think the suites in the older building have the character aspects of an older building, but it's fully renovated in terms of some of the walls and the appliances and the flooring.
So in effect, you would pay less for these suites in here, in the older building, than you would pay for the newer building?
My experience is like when they convert early 1900 buildings into newer units, they typically charge similar rents as.
But you don't know whether they're charging the same rent in this building as they are in that building?
The one-bedroom rents are about $1,100, and the two-bedroom rents are about $1,400.
So would they put most of the two-bedroom ones in the newer building?
I'm not sure what the breakdown is in terms of the units between the older building and the newer building.
Anything else, Robert?
I'm finished, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wong, first question. So this is the result of a supplementary assessment based on the renovation of the original building and the construction of the new portion?
Correct.
Okay, and when was it effective?
Yeah, right.
January 1st, 2019.
Okay. And I'm looking at the permit, and was that permit taken out in, was that February of,
18.
so February 12th, 2018, and that was to construct the new section of the 5-story addition, they're calling it. So was there a separate permit taken out for renovating and upgrading the original building at all, or is this blended?
This was the only one that
Okay.
that we have in our system. I didn't look any further.
Okay. Any notes from, did an assessor inspect the property? Regarding
Yes.
the permit? So any notes on whether, for the original building, whether it was, for instance, re-insulated, re-drywalled, new windows, new mechanical at all?
I really hate to interrupt here, but that wasn't provided to us, but the statement from the permit does say interior alterations are part of it.
Okay, I kind of assumed that, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thanks, sir. Okay, but any notes on the upgrading of the original building?
I don't.
I mean, we can see there's new windows, I guess, but,
Just converted from a commercial building to an apartment.
okay.
That's what it says down below.
All right, okay, thank you. And the effective year, yeah, the year built, okay, so let's get this straight. So we're showing an original building, that original building at 1905,
Yeah.
and it jumps to 2018.
Yeah.
So we've got a combination of the old and the new on the actual years built. Now, the effective year built is, what is it? So the old building has been bumped up to 1965, then we got the new build at 2018. So, but I guess it isn't blended to say it's the equivalent of, I don't know, 2000 or something? No. No, okay.
No.
So when you run when the model runs the age, maybe it blends them and comes up with a cap rate, is it based on them?
You know, it's possible that we might have a blended effective year built
Yeah.
for the
For the-
valuation of the property, but it would likely be above 1974,
Yeah.
which would put it in the same, like 1975 to new is the same category in terms of cap rate, so it would be the same cap rate.
Okay, and the location, 316 Ross, are we west of Princess?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Hold on.
It's
well-
just right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right by Red River College?
Yeah, actually, on my page 8 map, it shows that it's just slightly west of,
Ah, there we are, okay, yeah, oh yeah, okay.
it's
So Red
slightly
River-
west of Princess.
Okay, so Red River College is, okay, I see where it is, okay. So it's on the south side of Ross, all right, yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. And any idea of the rents they were asking? I know it's possibly post-reference, I think Mr. Newfeld had asked you, but I think you mentioned something there.
Yeah.
I think he mentioned to me.
Bachelors are 925, 1 bedrooms are 1102, and 2 bedrooms are 1435.
1435, okay. And that includes,
Water, central heating, cooling,
okay.
and internet.
Okay. And parking? Any parking at all?
Yeah, there's 58 indoor and 58 outdoor units.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I missed that, okay. Okay, so there's 116 parking stalls, okay, or indoor and outdoor plan. Okay. All right. That's all my questions. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
No, just one follow-up question,
Okay.
since the chairman opened the door.
Okay.
On
Again?
post-reference income. Is not post-reference income lower than your 2017 estimate of income?
It might be, seems like it's close.
Is it not lower? I know what seems close.
I-
I have
I-
a number of 12 million, sorry, 1.27 million, and you're at 1.296 million. That's lower, correct?
Well, if you, is that what you calculated?
If you don't have, well, you read out the rent rates, so I'm just wondering if first of all, you would agree that what it works out to of approximately one.
Well, I don't know, I didn't
1,270,000.
really look into it too much because it was post-reference.
Yeah, okay.
Fine.
You're
Repeat-
presented, Mr. Neufeld.
Can you just repeat the numbers then for me, on the unit rents? One bachelor, is that how much?
925.
And 71 bedrooms are at?
Wait a sec, you probably have this information, don't you?
It doesn't matter if I have it or not, I'm asking questions. 71 bedrooms are how much?
1102,
1102, thank you, and 23 two-bedrooms are?
1435.
1930. And your overall rental rate is 1149, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And, sorry, and also the CMHC rental rates are 1,100 and 1,400.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. Firstly, in rebuttal, and to be fair, I'm only presenting verbal rebuttal to verbal comments, and I think that's fair and appropriate. The concept of entrepreneurial profit has not been represented properly by the assessor. When the person builds a block, his return comes from the money he's making from his rents, not from selling it to himself at a pretend profit. This was built for this by the owner himself, and that's where his income will come from. And the other part of money on a project is after you build it, you get a mortgage out, and you pull some of your money back out, and then you work off your equity returns, and which hopefully will beat the mortgage returns, and that's where the money comes from. So the cost, there's no, the nonsense.
Excuse me.
10.8 million, that was the cost in, and
Okay.
there's no pretend entrepreneurial profit.
Okay.
A second point was the assessor brought up an appraisal for one of his comparable properties, which wasn't even, according to him, to be used as a comparable, it's only to support the model. He quoted an appraisal. You can't quote an appraisal.
Okay. Point taken.
And
We've heard this argument before.
I know, but since he brought it up,
Yeah.
our office did the appraisal on this site.
Okay.
My daughter did it, and we didn't cap at 5%.
Okay. But I guess we're not supposed to be talking about it, so why don't we just leave it there?
We're not, but he brought it up, so if he brings it up, I find that that's a little
Okay.
prejudicial. So if our office appraised it at 6%, I would certainly like you to know that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You. No, are we allowed? No, never mind, I'm not gonna say anything.
Now, on this property, it was a shell property where an addition was made, and there was some involvement on financing from the Affordable Housing Initiative, and what they are is there was no heritage grant on this one because it wasn't a conversion, but there are 6 units in here that are kept at, I believe the number used to be $650, and they're reserved for the use of people who are on assistance. And when that is done, then you're provided with some benefits to help you on your costs to build the site. So that's on the finance side. That's not a profit that they get or a return or anything. It's just that they can finance at a better rate. This particular developer has 4 similar properties. This is the same developer who did the Avenue building, same concept, as well as 2 other buildings in the neighborhood, or three other buildings in the neighborhood. The concept was Red River College, it does produce some opportunities for multifamily housing, and that's why he's got three projects there. So it's a distinct market. What we had was the 2019 income, which is post-reference. And we're going to stick with it because we know that it's below what the city assessor has on it for a 17 income. And the potential for revenue growth was marginal. We did not adjust it backwards for time because that just introduces another element that could be inaccurate. It's post-reference, and the board can decide if it gets any weight or not. But if anything, it would be higher than 2017 rates. So the potential for income on my page 1 is 1,270,000 plus parking at 107. At the time that this.
I'm sorry, could I be able to object to him presenting post-reference information?
Well,
Didn't you just provide it in your report?
Where?
Your lease cap rates were brought in, plus you provided the post-preference rental income.
you know what?
Open the door.
Let's put it this way. We'll allow Mr. Neufeld to present, and the board will decide in camera how much weight we're gonna put on it, okay?
Okay.
Fair enough? Thank you.
That's fair. Now, in the year of 2018, as the property was being absorbed, we appraised the property, and there was a 10% vacancy that ran through the year. And this is actually significantly better than many other projects that we've encountered, and that has to do with the market area and the fact that some of the units were set aside for assistance. So the mean average through the year was about 10%. So we were left with the effective gross income of 1,246,000. And that is, again, slightly less than the assessor at 1,260,000. Our expenses were calculated through a review of the actual, which they had a part year of 2018, beginning of 2018, and performance through 2019. So these did come from, the only one that's estimated is repair and maintenance, which there was no information on that because they don't have any yet. So we put in a budget number of $1,000 a unit, which is on the low side. Eventually, we came to a very conservative valuation of income at $684,000, capitalized at 6%. The issues on the capitalization rate are, first of all, the market, we'll call it the market prime, is, we agree on one point, it's represented by 333 Ward. The difference is that we rely on the actual sale, not pretend sale. The dispute is that the city assessor came up with this rate. I've heard the story before based on an appraisal someone gave them that showed it was 18.8. Our office handled the sale. We were the agent. It capped at 5.5%. That was what the vendor and the purchaser had agreed to in terms of the income that they relied on for that sale and the price they agreed to. It was 5.5%. And that's the baseline of a good property in Winnipeg. Not the subject, but a good property. And that's reported on my page 34. Now, the property suffers in respect to that, in that, for example, the ward sale is governed by a bylaw requiring, I think it's 1.4 spaces per unit. The subject property does not. It's got 73 parking stalls for its 94 units. So that's underneath code, and now it is downtown, so it does not have to comply with that code, but from an income perspective, that means that you limit your potential for your renters to people who don't have cars. And I don't care about political correctness, I care about the market. People want a place to park their cars, and we're not getting rid of them in a city like Winnipeg. So that's a downside on it. The other issue is that it is not new. Part of the building was 114 years old. Part of it is 2 years old, 1 year old. The costs associated with that can't be ignored by simply saying it was renovated, and most of it is new. There's still that element to deal with. They didn't change the envelope, the framing, the foundation for the older portion of the unit. So your costs will be riskier on that, and you'll have to account for more. And at the same on the same issue, parts of the building are just older. And in my mind, as an appraiser, the most important point is that you're subject to less reliability of costs, that you could incur large costs that were unexpected. And for example, a crumbling foundation wall, and it does happen. You'll probably hear about it later today on an older building. Yeah, I think that one's in here. So when we are looking at the base rate of 5.5% in the city, the 6% rate is appropriate for this property, and again, the assessor opened the door. That's what we appraised it at. Thank you.
Okay, I'm out of glass now. I don't see your value here, Mr. Duca.
That's what I was gonna
11,411,000.
Okay.
It's
at
the
top,
upper
okay.
box.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
that's,
looking down at the work up there and it kind of,
Yeah, I see.
well, that does provide us some entrepreneurial profit of $600,000.
there you go. Okay, so you're asking for 11,411,000, your NOI is 684, 647, okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. Wong, any questions of Mr. Neufeld?
I guess you have the budgeted expenses. So your expenses are based off of a budget?
Yes and no. I think I mentioned earlier that some of these were actual. For example, at the point in time when we got this information, we had performance on utility costs, caretaking, and taxes. We did not have a budget on repair and maintenance, or we did, but it was actually quite low, but because there wasn't any, so that was the part that we budgeted, $1,000. And when I say the budget, that doesn't mean they're all budgets. Sometimes, like a budget is the financial document.
I was just wondering, did you provide that document?
Yeah, that's why I was asking if you had it, because I don't think we're at the point where it has to be submitted yet.
Aren't you in contact with the owner?
No, but like submitted under the income and expense issue. I don't think that we're even at the point where it's supposed to be provided yet. So that's why I asked you because if you did have a statement from the 2000
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, you based it off of the statement, and I'm just wondering if you provided that statement that you based it on.
No, I didn't provide it, I have it.
Okay.
Yeah. But I don't think, okay, if we're talking about 2019 performance, you wouldn't even have asked for that until next year. Yeah, that's right, so you wouldn't have it, I don't think.
No, that we wouldn't ask for that until early next year.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you provided it.
No, he said.
Well,
Yeah.
we provided the excerpt from it, and the only part that was projected instead of like part of it was extrapolated from the performance up to date, which was, we prepared this document beginning of October.
Yeah.
So we had October 19 statements. So we had 8 months of performance, and the only number that we budgeted was the repairs and maintenance.
Okay. You're an appraiser, right?
That's correct.
You said Colliers appraised the property, correct?
That's correct.
What was the appraised value for the property?
None of your business.
Why? Yeah, I thought we were talking about trying to estimate market value. Wouldn't the appraisal give an accurate indication of market value?
First of all, it's, the only reason I even discussed it in the first place is because you presented misleading information on 3334 board. And I presented only the cap rate from there. As far as the rest of the conclusions in there, they are not meant for the assessment department. They were meant for a different purpose and function. They weren't, they were post-reference on value.
Okay, you know what? Mr. Newfeld's not gonna give it to you.
Yeah, and we're not required to.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, you're not gonna, he's not gonna provide it, so.
I could get it out, quote from it on my phone, but I know the chairman's well-known concern for people looking at their phones, so.
Okay, and I guess that would be all my questions.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Wong. Marla, any questions of Mr. Newfeld?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. Robert, any questions?
Yes, I do. In your verbal presentation, you ended up referring to the fact that there was 8% vacancy.
10.
You said 8.
No, I said 10 is what's written here.
You said 8.
The only 8 I used was 8 months of operation.
Well, I didn't know what you were referring to.
8 months of operation, which is the beginning of January to October when we got our statement, our interim statement.
Okay, so that's why I was a little confused when you had 10 here.
But yeah, at the beginning of term, the vacancy was up 20% or so. At the end of that term, I think we were down. I don't have the exact number, but we averaged it out over the performance and applied at 10.
The pictures that you have here, are they of the new building or of the renovated building?
It's a mix. For example, on page 4, obviously the gym area is the old building because you can see the timber
I'm
framing.
not asking about that, I'm asking about this here.
Which page?
Page 3.
I really don't know. I know the top 2 pictures are of the newer building. I'm not sure about the bottom 2.
Okay, thank you.
It appears that the page 4 has the framing of a early 1900s building, so they kept some characteristics of it, but then they kind of renovated the rest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Newfeld, and your work up on page 1, 73 parking spots, is that the only income or is it, because I think the assessor said 116.
Oh, well, on page 3,
Okay,
this is the potential rent, asphalt. The top, there's a very small budget. And this is what they're expecting, or what their asphalt rate is.
okay,
These aren't actuals.
Oh.
This is before the vacancy.
okay, thank you. And I'm looking at the assessor's suite mix on page 3 of his presentation, and there is only one bachelor out of the 94 suites, I guess.
Right.
I'd assume that might be one of the
No,
assistants.
no, they have to be bedrooms.
Oh, they do?
Because it'll be usually a single-family situation, a single-parent family situation.
Okay,
So that the minimum is a 1 bedroom.
yeah, okay. All right. That's my only questions. Mr. Wong, any requirement for summary?
No, but I'd just like to, I guess, present some rebuttal for the cap rate information that Mr. Neufeld has provided. Or I can do it on the next property.
Okay, sounds
Yeah.
good. Okay, thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
I think we covered it.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so that concludes the 2019 year of 316 Ross Avenue. And we're gonna go to 2020 year, 316 Ross Avenue. I guess this is a result of a supplementary assessment also, so we're dealing with file number 19-4930, 2020 realty assessment. Mr. Wong, when you're ready, please.
Okay, the subject property is 316 Ross, the roll number is 130-990-71390, and it's for the 2020 roll year. It is identical to 2019. The main thing that, the main difference is, on my page 1, we have an assessed value of $18 million. That is incorrect. The correct value is on my page 3. The correct value is $15,120,000.
So we both have this 18 million, so where did it come from?
It was a change in cap rate.
So no, but what's the posted assessment?
The posted assessment is $18 million.
Okay, so are you suggesting that you're making recommending a change in value here?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just dealing with the semantics of your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, there was an error on the $18 million assessment, and after correcting the error, the assessed value is $15,120,000. And it's on my page 3.
Okay. So you're on the record revising that amount based on your workup on page 3, okay? Would you like to quickly go through maybe, I guess we're dealing with the same information, Mr. Wong, but
It's identical.
I'll let you summarize it too.
Sure.
Okay, well, okay, exactly the same.
Yeah, it is exactly the same.
Okay. So, okay,
Except for
Page
instead
30.
of 14,719, it's 15,120.
yeah, okay. All right. Mr. Neufeld, any questions?
Much fewer. We're just going to assume we've discussed a lot of these factors already. On your expenses, page 4, you have a fairly wide range from 32 to 42% on new buildings. Did you investigate why that's happening?
Buildings don't operate exactly the same.
Okay. Now, will your expense ratio, could it have been because some of these buildings have the tenants pay their utilities and some have the landlord?
Some do, some are net rents and some are gross, where the owner pays for all the utilities or part of the utilities, or the tenant pays for part of the utilities or all of the utilities.
All right, so do you know what the subject does? Are the utilities included?
Water, central heating and cooling, and internet.
Included.
Yeah.
So do you have this, I mean, I'm looking at some of these buildings where I know that they're separately metered, and I'm just wondering if you made any consideration for that factor on your selection of an expense ratio. Like, how do you do it? How do you input into your system? Do you say it's a net building or gross building?
Well, the 41% is at the higher end of the range for newer buildings.
Should you not have presented this board with information on your comparables to indicate whether they were nets or semi-gross or gross?
I did not present that information.
The cap rate on both years is the same. Is this, are you inferring or stating that the cap rate didn't change in the 2-year period?
The cap rate is the same.
Or does that infer that the city model does not believe the cap rate changed in the 2-year period?
Well, I can tell you that the range in cap rates in the previous cycle was from 5 to 6.7, and currently it is from 4 to 7.5. And previously, the majority of the cap rates fell between 5.2 and 5.5%, whereas currently they fall between 4.9 and 5.3%.
So on the 20th to 80th percentile, which was the last set of figures you quoted,
Yeah.
your rates would indicate that, your information indicates the rates have dropped in the 2-year period. Is that a correct interpretation?
It did drop for the 20th and 80th percentile, yes.
And on the lows and highs, it increased at the top end and decreased at the bottom end.
Yes.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Marla, any questions of the assessor?
No.
Okay, thank you. Robert?
No questions.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wong, so we've got, I'm comparing 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
Bumped up the rent from $11.49 to $11.83 approximately per suite, going from 2019, 2020. Okay, so you're saying the market went up a little bit on those suite value, right? Okay.
Yeah, the market has gone up a little bit in between assessment cycles.
Okay, you've maintained the same expense ratio, rate, pardon me, and maintained the same cap rate. Okay. That's my only question, thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I ask for a 2-minute break?
Sure. We'll just recess for 2 minutes, please. Okay, call the hearing back to order. Mr. Neufeld, it is your turn, please.
Like the assessor, not much of a change. The only difference is the vacancy rate has dropped to 5%. And as I did mention, it was dropping through the actual performance of 2019. And our statements from beginning of October would extrapolate that that's going to be the number for the year of 2020. It was higher than that. And that's nothing else to discuss or point out other than, sorry, I missed earlier that the building is a gross building, so expenses are included. And the impact on the capitalization rate is that you have another variable for your income and your returns on it. So if you have a cold winter, heating costs go up, and your return is diminished, your financial return is diminished, so you have to cap higher to take that into account. You also have to deal with increases in utility costs. It's just another factor in the selection of a capitalization rate. More stable rates come from properties where as many expenses as possible have been offloaded to the tenants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, no, sorry, there was one other thing I was going to point out. The break threw me off. Earlier I asked the assessor a question about changing our rates. Now, in our Collier's tracking system, on pages 18 and 19, we have our rates, and remember that these are not going to be for the subject property because we wouldn't have tracked a building like this. But the previous cycle, our range was 475 to 575, and our new range for the next cycle, the current one, is 5 to 6. So we're reporting a quarter point higher. And you have to remember about our rates is these are the rates to the purchaser, which include land titles, transfer fees, and commissions, which deflate the rates. So they adjust upwards by half a point. So that's why I'm always saying earlier that the base rate was 5.5. That's our lowest rate for this sort of property, for multifamily. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong?
No questions, but I guess I just provide that rebuttal for some cap rates.
Okay. Sorry. That's good.
It's okay.
Thanks, Katie.
So I guess just on the first page, it just sort of summarizes what the Colliers has estimated for the cap rate for 228 Notre Dame and 1830 Portage, and 333 Ward, and then what I've calculated based off of the income and expense information that we have available. So on my page one, I've calculated 4.16% as compared to Mr. Neufeld's 5.53, and for Portage, calculated 4.8 as compared to 6.58. If you go to page 3, the property sold in late 2017. We didn't have any information for 2017 or 16, but when we look at the information that we do have, which is 2015 and 14, try to estimate their operating income. If you can use their 2015 operating income of $507,000, and the expenses from 2015 and 2013 at 292,000. The NOI is 214,000, applied against the sale of 5,150,000 is 4.16%. And that's how I estimated the cap rate. On page 5, the same process for 1830 Portage. And on page 7, the cap rate used in the appraisal for 233 Ward is 5%, and based on 18 sales that indicated 5%. And on page 9 are the income and expense information for 228 Notre Dame and 1830 Portage. I just want to show that the cap rates are lower than what the applicant might be indicating.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Wong. Mr. Neufeld, any questions or comments?
Okay, yeah, well, it's gonna be painful. For the record, page 7, do you have written permission to refer to any part of this appraisal, whether in part or in whole?
You know what, I'll cut this off right now. We understand your position.
No, it's not a position, it's a
Well,
little bit more than that.
I know, but we understand what you said before about
Well,
it
it's-
earlier. I know in principle you think it shouldn't be, or.
No, it's not, it's not,
Okay,
it's not a principle.
okay,
Well,
okay, how about this?
I have to ask that.
Yeah, okay,
Just for the
fair-
record.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough. I'm sorry, you're right.
So,
You're right.
do you
Okay.
have permission to quote from someone else's appraisal?
I did not seek permission. This is just information that was provided in a previous hearing, so.
By a third party? So what, okay, are you suggesting that the assessment department should now just accept appraisals as a proof of value?
Not at all.
Why are you presenting?
We don't provide, other people, other organizations calculate their cap rates based off of information that they have. We calculate our cap rates based off of information that we have. So if we make a reference to other organizations, it's just to, in a sense,
Well, you're presenting it here,
Support.
you're asking the
Support.
board, you're
It's-
asking the
it's-
board
it's
to look
for
at this.
Supporting,
Right, you're
our
asking the
rates.
board to rely on this. So my question is, if you're asking the board to rely on a third-party appraisal, or, does that mean that both sides of the street should be doing this?
we present information that supports the rates that we've applied.
It's not the question. The question is, if you're using third-party appraisals, are you suggesting to the board that those are pertinent for them to rely on?
It is up to the board. This is information that we presented.
Well, you are
In
aware,
support.
you are aware that I'm an accredited appraiser?
Are you?
Are you not aware that I'm an accredited appraiser?
I believe you are.
So I've suggested a value to the board.
Yes.
If you're presenting another appraisal that we haven't even seen the documentation for and suggesting that they rely on it, does not the board have to give my presentation even greater weight? Because not only am I an appraiser, but I'm actually here presenting information.
Have you presented information?
You've received it.
We've provided information, and the applicant has provided information.
The income and expense forms that you've stated here, to your knowledge, did the vendor and purchaser rely on these to determine their sale?
I am not sure. It is the cap rate that I've calculated based off of the information that was supplied to us.
Do the dates match up with the date of sale?
For 228 Notre Dame, the sale took place in late 2017. We didn't have information for, the purchaser didn't supply any income and expense information for 2017. We didn't have any information, we didn't have any mailer information for 2016. We did have income and expense information for 2015 and 14 and 13. The cap rate that I've estimated is based off of that information.
So the answer is no, you did not have, if the dates don't match up, they're 2 years out, correct?
They are potentially 1 year out, because they would have used the year prior to the sale. For
228 Notre Dame, you have 12 months ending December 2017. You just said that the sale took place 2 months ending December 2015. You just said the sale took place December 2017. So the statements are 2 years out, correct?
I said Q4, I said late 2017.
Okay, 2 years out, doesn't change it. They're still 2 years out.
They would have likely relied on the year before, but we didn't have.
How do you know that? Were you there at the sale?
Typically, when people look for income and expense information to try to, they would look to the most recent information, the most recent full year information. The most recent full year information would have likely been 2016. We didn't have 2016, but we did have 2015, 14, and 13. Using the information that we did have, we estimated a cap rate of 4.16%.
That's your opinion. They would have looked for the most recent year. Have you ever been involved in a transaction of apartment block?
No.
Same
And getting back to
questions?
for 1830 Portage Avenue,
That's what I was
it
gonna
sold
ask you
in.
next.
It sold in early 2016. So the information, the most recent information available would have been 2015 and 14 and 13. And
And
looking
who
at
bought
that,
it? Who bought 1830 Portage?
I haven't finished this question yet.
Well, no, because I didn't ask that question.
You did ask the question. You did ask the question
You're
about.
on your own. We asked about the date. You answered.
Yeah.
You answered the date.
Yeah.
You said spring
You know
of
what?
16.
We're having a debate here. I
Okay.
think maybe, could we all agree that a purchaser would look over a range of years to establish
Well-
an income? Would that be fair?
If that's what he's saying,
Well-
that's all what I'm going to say.
Okay. But that's what he's saying, and
Now,
that's.
okay, let's just forget that line and move
Okay.
on to my next question, which is, do you know who the purchaser was?
I do not.
Was the purchaser involved in the property prior to sale?
I don't know.
Did you check whether it was an arm's length sale, or what the relationship was?
Well, I don't know. I think you're using the sale, are you
No,
not?
I'm just asking you the question. Did you look into it? I'm not questioning the sale, I'm asking, did you look into it?
I did not.
Okay. Those are my questions on this, and I obviously have the opportunity to respond.
Okay. Marla, any questions of the rebuttal evidence?
No.
Okay. Robert?
Well, just for informational sake for myself, if I look at 1830 Portage, just so I understand the calculations, we did have 2015, and it seemed that the expenses went up, and yet you ended up using 14 and 13 on average. Why would we just not use 2015 expenses, which a purchaser would be looking at, unless there was something in there that should be blended, like in other words, repairs that now came about where it didn't come about in the other couple of years. Why would we not then use 77,000 instead of an average of 57?
If you look on page 12, their repair and maintenance for that year is 37,000.
Yeah.
The subject property has 13 units. And from my experience, when a property is experiencing $3,000 in repair and maintenance, it seems fairly high. So I felt it was more appropriate to exclude that year.
But why wouldn't you just then average all 3 years? In other words,
I mean,
because in this particular, I'm just asking, in this
Yeah.
particular case,
yeah.
the maintenance, when I look at all 3 years, the maintenance in the last year was higher than it was in others. So what it's meaning is that all of a sudden we have to do something, but it really
Yeah.
should have, if it was averaged out.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering why you just used the 2 years and not use the last year also in the average.
Yeah, I didn't feel that the high repair and maintenance would have been reflective of how it performs on a regular basis. Because
But maintenance is maintenance. It just, so instead of it coming in these years, sometimes you catch up.
yeah, yeah.
I was just asking.
No, I guess that's what I felt, is that it didn't represent a normal year in terms of repair and maintenance. And if it was included, it would probably bring the cap rate down a little bit more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I have no questions. Mr. Neufeld?
When a property is sold, an investment property, a commercial property, represented by skilled professionals, they don't look at the income and expense forms. We all know that. That'd be silly. They do look at the statements, and past performance is of interest, but the statements are done up to the date of sale or projected date of sale. They're also done on a pro forma basis looking forward to see what it will be. That's how property is bought and sold. You can have bad years, and I'm glad that the board member pointed that out to the assessor. You can have bad years, but that's not what the sale is based on. In this particular instance of 1830 Portage, the eventual purchaser was the property manager. Now, the owners had indicated they wanted to sell. They spent a bit more money in the years leading up to the sale to improve their property for sale. That's just human nature. And then it was advertised on the market. They didn't get any takers. and the property manager made them an offer and it was accepted. That's how that happened. And
Also, you're kind of saying that the last year of maintenance might not be a normal year of maintenance because they were trying to get it ready for sale.
those are your words. My words are, it's like I'll tell you a story and I'll be short. I got a friend who bought a car. Bought it for, let's say, $4,000. He sold it 3 years later for $10,000. Did he make money in the car? No. He fixed it up. That's what we all do when you want to sell something. You fix it up. And then he brought it to a market that liked that sort of car instead of Manitoba. So that's when you see those last year bumps on expenses, it's to fix it up to make it look nice for sale. But not cosmetic. The purchaser doesn't look at cosmetics. He's thinking, how much deferred maintenance are you selling me? And if the deferred maintenance has been looked after, then it's a better investment risk. I was first party involved in this transaction in 1830 Portage. That's what happened. 228 Notre Dame, our company handled the sale, and it's a client of mine who purchased it. We had full access to their financials. Those are the numbers that were relied on for sale. Ward Avenue, not my client, but our company's client, full access to financials. That's what was decided on. At the time of sale, that's the key here. What was going through the minds of the purchasers and the vendors as to what the income and expenses were, and that's how a sale is made. And the mistake we're looking at is this is nothing. You can't have any weight on the income and expense form because it has nothing to do with the sale. It's interesting. You can look for problems. If I was a purchaser, I'd say, yeah, let me see these. I want to see their past history. I wouldn't want these, of course. I'd want the source documents, the statements. But that's not what they're based on.
Okay. Mr. Wong? Okay. All right, so any requirement for summary? I think we've
Did it.
got a clear picture, thank you. All right, so he's got the rebuttal key, yeah. Okay, so that concludes the 2020 appeal for 316 Ross Avenue. 239 Colony. Okay. You know what, I'm gonna recess for 5 minutes right now, and then we'll continue on in about 7 minutes, how's that? Call the hearing back to order. 239 Colony Street is next on the docket, and we're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. Mr. Wong, when you're ready, please.
The subject property is 239 Colony. It's the roll number is 120-915-08000. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1939 and has 29 suites with 1 outdoor parking stall. On page 3 is our income valuation. We use average rents of $526 to get a potential income of $183,000. We used a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $178,000, and we used a 58% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $74,000. Capped at 6.6%, we have an estimated market value of $1,134,000, which is $39,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 6 are some cap rate sales. On page 8 are some pictures of the subject property with its location. The remember for the income and expenses that are submitted by the owner. You the income indicated by the income expenses are a little bit lower than what the model is estimating. But I still feel that sometimes the numbers don't tell the whole story. And in this particular case, like if you look on my page 6 on the cap rate sales, a lot of the value per suite ranges from about 70 to 174,000 on my page 6. And the model has the assessed value for the subject property at about 39,000 per unit. So we have reflected this property as being lower than average. So the rents that we've supported, that presented are supported by the market, and the 58% expense ratio is higher than average. And the cap rate that we've applied at 6.6% is supported by the market, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $1,134,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, have you had the opportunity to inspect this property?
I have not.
Page 3, was this all generated by the model?
I believe so, yes.
You mentioned in your statements that the actual income was, what were your words? A little bit lower than the model?
Yes.
What was the actual income reported to you for the year in question?
36,000
And you?
and 68,000.
37,000 as compared to your net operating here of 74,000.
Yes.
That's not a little bit lower, is it? That's not a
Well,
lot lower?
You're ignoring the other year where there was 68,000 in operating income.
Okay, that's fine, we'll get to that. But that's not a little bit lower either, is it?
68 compared to 74.
Yes. You consider that a little bit lower, and 36,000 compared to 74,000, that's not a little bit lower, is it? You're taking 1 year in isolation and looking at it at average?
We're not saying.
I just wanted you to clarify your comment, that a little bit lower isn't a fair comment, is it?
It might not be a fair comment for 2017, but I believe it is a fair comment for 2016.
Okay. Do you, in your records, show a chronic problem that's been reported to you?
Sorry, I didn't understand your question.
I'm just wondering if he is aware that of their records, if there's a chronic problem in their records that's been reported concerning for this building.
I'm not sure.
Okay. You've included these two statements, and I'm puzzled by something here, and you did bring it up. For the latest year, the potential income on line 105 is 171,980. You see that?
Sorry, what page?
Sorry, page 9.
Yep.
The previous year, which would be page 12, is 180,586. You see that?
Yep.
So, I said we'd get to this later, so what we have here is an $8,500 decrease in potential income.
I don't think it's
As you go
potential,
forward.
it's a decrease in what they actually received.
Okay, but decrease in income.
Yeah.
And, so did that not make you consider that there might be a problem with one or two of the years?
These are,
Is this,
we try to estimate as best we can, and
is this normal? Would you expect to see a decrease in income?
it's not typical to what I've seen.
Okay. Now, the reason I asked you about if your system had anything, I'm just wondering if your system had knowledge that there were some issues with the property, would it have been inputted into your model or an override in your model?
I mean, if we were aware of something, we would give it consideration.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Marla, any questions of the assessor?
No.
Thank you. Robert?
I do. I noticed in page 11, the total income that was at 100% occupancy is $226,000. Page 11?
Yes.
And yet, it doesn't seem like in 2015, 16, or 17, that they ever did realize that total 100%. So it would seem to me that there's quite a bit of vacancy there.
It appears to be the case. It's kind of difficult
No,
to
it
say.
doesn't appear it is, because based on these revenues, we didn't get 226,000, got 168 or 180 or 171.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit of reduction.
Yeah.
And yet the model only gives 2.6%.
Yeah.
So would that not be taken into consideration?
Well, the thing is, when you look at what the model is estimated in terms of income, it's about 180,000, and their actual income is about 171 and 180,000. So I think it has taken it into consideration in that regard. It's not like the model is estimating 223,000 for, the model didn't estimate 223,000 for income.
And also, I would assume that the reason the net operating income for 2017 is reduced because there seems to be a large maintenance and repair that year of $67,000. So that would have to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, well, that's why I say it appears, because sometimes it's difficult for us to know exactly what's going on with the repair and maintenance or with regards to the vacancy without getting into the building and talking with the owner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, is there a condition modifier on this property that you know of? Is it average or? Like you
I
made a
think
comment
it appears
about.
that it is reflecting this property as a lower than average apartment building.
Okay, so that's driving the assessment downwards, as you mentioned, per unit 39,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the rent is, that it's assigned is $526. Some others are, like typical bachelors are market bachelors are more than that.
Okay.
And so,
Okay, that's my only question, thank you. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
Yes, there was something in their system on this property, because 2 years ago, it had been reviewed, and there's a physical problem, and there was an override, and they put it on a vacancy rate, last year at 10%. And I have that form here, that's why I didn't know if the assessor had it or not.
Okay. So the last cycle was 10%.
Yeah, and it was an override.
Okay.
And also for the record, the cap rate applied was 7.25 by the board. The problem is that there's a negative grade hot water boiler system. And it was built that way, built wrong, and the pipes are buried beneath in the foundation. I haven't been down into that space, but it hasn't been economical to repair. And what happens is that with the reverse grade on it, they have a lot of problems with boilers, and they spring them a lot, and they break and they spray out suites, and they have to empty the suites and move people around. The last case where they had a difficult time was in 2017, and you can see that the income dropped for that reason, and the expenses were higher for the repair costs. And the problem is, it hasn't been repaired, it's been addressed. It'll continue to give the building a problem, and it has since I first started dealing with this property, which would have been 2005. It used to be right across the street from my last place of work. So you can see that there's a bad year on the expense side and a bad year on the revenue side. What we've done is tried to average out the expenses, which we do all the time, is we tend to take the last year of financial performance with the averaged expenses, and then have an NOI, and you can see that the NOI has ranged. The assessor was correct, one year was 68,000, no blown boilers that year. Year before 48,000, and the most closest year 36,000, and we're applying at 49,560. So that's our attempt at evening out the issue over time. Our cap rate is the same as the one that was decided last year at 7.25. The application last year of the 10% vacancy rate was an acknowledgement that there's a problem, but it doesn't speak to the long-term future of the property in terms of dealing with it. The obvious solution would be to change the heating system throughout the whole building and go to a per unit system. They've looked at that, but with 1939 construction, that tends to be a very expensive proposition. There's not enough money coming out of the property to justify those sorts of repairs, so your question is, do you take a $20,000 hit in income one year, or do you spend $200,000 on fixing a problem? And this is a dilemma that all commercial units have to deal with. And it is what it is, and if it gets fixed, we'll see more stable income and expenses, but it's not. So our number is below last year, and that has to do with the fact that the performance deteriorated. The other number I was going to point out for you is that the potential income, if all the units were going to be rented as full, and that's, the assessors provided us those numbers on pages 11 and 13. It rose 1.3%, which is, these are the asking rates. So that indicates that they've had a RTV approved increase, but that doesn't coincide with the achieved rates for two reasons. One is you don't always get those RTV rates, and secondly, you have to deal with the vacancy problems. Sorry, I was looking at my notes. Can't fix the boiler, it's in the walls. Okay. So it would have to deal with the foundation and end framing on it. There are some market cap rates in here as well, and you know, we're saying for good properties, a really good property, it'd be 5.5. properties with minor problems, 6. We accepted the board's 7.25 last year. Previous year was 7.75. But the last cycle, they'd had a better performance year, so it seemed fair at the time, and we didn't appeal it. The last 2 years has been worse. So the way Manitoba, our system works, if you have a problem, you only get your assessment revised 2 years after your problem, not the year of the problem. But that's the reality. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Okay, just to confirm your value, you're asking for is 684,000?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wong, any questions?
Regarding the issues that you're talking about, do you have any sort of a report on those issues that we could maybe take a look at and potentially put in our system?
Well, that's why I asked the question on it, because the assessor dealt with it last year, said that it was in the system. And
Is that what,
yeah, do you want to see it? It was Chris Hardman dealt with it, and
can I see what it said? Like, what did she say?
well, it was verbal testimony, and I
Oh.
have my notes here. She said it was reviewed, and then they applied a 10% vacancy.
And that doesn't say anything about permanent structural problems, though.
She was aware of the issue.
Oh. Okay, so all she said was that she applied a 10% vacancy, and not necessarily why.
No, we talked about it. She was aware of the problem. I think she'd handled it in the past. Now, the previous assessment to that, it was all based on the model, and the assessor had no knowledge of the problems.
Okay,
And
I guess the question is,
No,
do you have a
no.
report that maybe we can put on file so that we're aware of this
Well,
problem?
no, I thought you had it, because that's what I'm telling you about, is that.
Well, maybe you should talk about it after the.
Yeah.
One day
So-
after the
so
hearing.
do you- okay, the question is, do you have a report?
Well, I do have this
Okay.
report that I gave you in 2013, the same issue, and when you were the assessor. So now, let's just see what you did at the time. 1.1% vacancy. Well, the board did change that.
Okay, so you don't have, okay,
No,
do
it's.
you have a formal report that maybe
No,
we
I
can keep on
don't,
file?
I don't, there's no formal report by an engineer because it's being dealt with by a tradesperson. So that tradesperson
Okay.
hasn't provided us with a report, because that's not their job is to fix it. But we have had assessors, we have made assessors aware of it. Chris dealt with it, you did. What do you want me to say?
I just want you to say, no, I don't have a report.
Oh, no, I don't have a report.
Okay, that's good, that's good.
Or if you want it to be dealt with properly in the future, the assessor's recommending you provide them with some
Yes.
kind of an estimate to cure, I guess.
But I mean, that's that notification issue. If we told them like
Okay.
12 times at the Board of Revision, and we had, 2 years ago, Chris Hardman acknowledged it and did something about it, like, I don't know if there's a system for doing this, is there?
Yes, providing reports stating the problems that you have,
Like
so
we
that we
do-
have it on file.
Yeah, like when we file these, right? It's on your
No,
file.
I'm talking about,
Okay, we'll leave it at that. All right. Anything else, Mr. Wong?
no, that's all my questions.
Okay, Marla,
No, good.
Robert?
Yeah, I do. You say that you've been looking after this particular property since 2005?
I think 2005 was the date I started.
So you were present in regards to the 2018 assessment,
That's correct.
and you agreed to the 933,000?
No, that was a board decision, and,
But based on information that you provided?
right, that's correct.
And they reduced it?
What happened is that the assessor came with a 10% vacancy rate, but a capitalization rate that was a bit higher, and we asked the board for a higher capitalization rate, and they gave it to us.
Which was 7.25.
Yeah, 725. She was at 6% that year.
And at that particular time, the boiler still had a problem.
Well, that was, as I mentioned, that was a good year for the boiler. We didn't have a problem immediately preceding that period. It was after that time period that the bills rolled in.
So when they've now spent $63,000, $67,000, I assume most of that is for the boiler?
Yeah, 29,000 in that ballpark, I think, was the boiler repair that particular year.
And so what is the status now?
The pipes were repaired. The same situation exists where the grade hasn't been changed, because that's,
But right now it's operating.
it's operating, and we're just waiting for the next event.
So you feel that this property has decreased from 933 to 684?
Yeah, because as I mentioned, there's a 2-year lag in performance versus assessment. We're stuck with the reference year. And at the last cycle, the data provided indicated we hadn't had any problems the 2 previous years. At this cycle, a problem resurfaced. And
But it's being solved somewhat now.
of course, but how, we never got, what should have happened from a business point of view is that it should have been addressed 2 years ago with an assessment to deal with the problem that happened, but the financial information was post-reference. So it's just the application of the law. Every problem gets fixed 2 years later, and at some point it does have to be dealt with.
So during this period of time when there's a boiler problem and there might not be any heat, how are the tenants supplied with heat in the winter or so forth?
They're the worst affected tenants are moved out, and I think they've got some portable heaters that they supply, and the work isn't a replacement of the boiler, so it's pipe work, so they get to work on the pipes and try to get them done as quickly as possible.
Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I have no questions. Any requirement for summary, Mr. Wong?
No.
Mr. Felt? And
No.
okay, thank you. That concludes 239 Colony. Next property on the docket is 217 Sherbrooke. And we're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. Mr. Wong, when you're ready, please.
Sure, the subject property is 217 Sherbrooke Street. The roll number is 120-905-61000.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just reading this. I guess, are you asking for non-compliance on this property?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay, maybe if you would explain your position on that, and then we'll have Mr. Neufeld respond.
Sure, we requested the 2017 mailer information, and we didn't receive anything. We sent out a second request, and we still didn't receive anything, so that is the reason why we are seeking non-compliance for this property.
Okay.
On page 10 is the tracking report, where several people signed for, there are multiple owners and I guess multiple requests. On page 12 are the certified envelopes. And on page 14 is the mailer that was sent out.
Okay, so for clarification, you've got 3 mailers. I guess there's 3 different owners, or there's an estate plus 3 owners?
Yeah, there's
And it was
several.
mailed to the 3 participants or owners, pardon me. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Two.
All right. Okay. Mr. Neufeld, any comments?
Just a question, what's the historical performance on this property? You have this little printout that you usually have, don't you?
Yeah, it's on page 2.
Okay, right, so that's what I was looking for. Oh, okay, got it. So there was a missed response in 2013.
Yes,
And the mailer from 2018 was sent and received?
it was received, it was, it didn't have any information on it, it was a blank submission.
Oh, wait, is that in your information?
No. We didn't receive anything, I think there was an online submission and it was, there was nothing on it.
Sorry, you had a receipt, and you say there's nothing on it, but that, and you don't have it with you? What, a screenshot of what was received?
No.
Is that page 16 and 17?
Page 16 and 14, 15, 16 and 17.
That's blank.
Yeah, that's the request that we sent out in the certified mailer.
That's the printed one that was mailed to them, that's not the online version, is it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't aware that they had actually received something here. I wanted to have a look at it. I think the board can understand what the issue is here. We're dealing with an estate and the question of where the service went to, but now they're saying that they received something in response, so.
Well, in all fairness, on page 12, it was sent to one of the owners, Catherine Sparling. She's named on the title.
Right.
So one of the owners received it.
No,
plus this.
you know, and we're not just debating the fact that, like, there's obviously a receipt was granted.
Yeah.
The point here is, now the question is, they don't like the quality of what they received in response, so we should be able to examine that.
Right, but the assessor's under oath to say that it was received blank.
No, I don't think that's good enough. This
Well, that will decide.
Oh, no, I know, okay, I'm arguing. I'm saying I don't think that's good enough.
Okay.
We should have seen that in the package.
Okay.
Because, you know, our position isn't that if they've done their paperwork correctly and what they're saying is correct, we're not going to, you know, we have to accept the penalty because it exists. All we need to see is if it was correct, and we don't have that. I honestly, I only just looked at this today, like, it says here, this is what I was looking at, response received, page 2. Now this new saying, oh no, we got a response, but it was 0, there's nothing in it. That's new information, and,
Okay,
I don't think that's fair.
all right. Do you have any questions of the assessor, Arla? Regarding that?
Well, I'm just
And plus, all the other
confused.
years had something in it, so why, because he's provided it, so.
I'm just confused about this whole thing, so why does it say, okay, so it says response received July 1st, 2018, so what was received on July 1st, 2018?
It was, I believe it was a blank online submission. I'm actually not totally sure. I believe I did look at the. I was like, well, they submitted something. It's like, when I looked for it and I couldn't find anything, so I went to the online and I looked at the year for which it was submitted, and basically there was nothing entered. And so.
Okay, so why didn't you bring a copy of that for us?
You know what? I actually didn't think to bring it. The next time I will bring a screenshot of it. Yeah.
Okay.
I will bring it. I will bring it next. In this type of a situation doesn't come up a lot. But next time I will bring that. But I.
Okay. Robert, any questions of the assessor?
No.
Okay. And I have none either. Mr. Neufeld, your concern is warranted, and I think the assessors stated his case of what happened here. So would you mind, we're gonna take a
Sure.
in-camera recess.
Right.
Okay, call the hearing back to order. In order to make our decision on this, we have one question that we require for clarification. And I'll ask Robert to ask the question regarding to Mr. Neufeld.
Mr. Neufeld, do you have the 2017 revenue and expenses?
17, that's the previous
The one
year?
that we're talking about never being received and was
Oh,
received?
no, I don't have a previous statement.
Is there any reason why you don't have it?
It's an interesting situation. We, on our own, try to go through the files of our clients and make sure they're submitted. This particular property, now this is managed by the company, but not controlled by the company. They don't own it, so they're not responsible for filing it. So this isn't one I was directly involved in.
What do you mean by the company's not?
Okay, this is
If the
managed.
company manages it, do they not responsible for?
No, they don't get it. They don't get this is managed by Smith Agency. Smith Agency have about 90 properties. They own 87.
I know
of them.
Smith Agency.
Yeah, they own about 87, and then they have some arrangements when they manage for 3. So all of their other ones, which Colony, for example, they own, the statements come to them, and we operate as a double check system. For this property, 217 Sherbrooke, and they don't get it directly, so it wouldn't be part of their responsibility, so it's sent to the
What do you mean
estate.
they don't get it directly?
They don't.
They don't get the request from the city
No,
directly?
no,
Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, they don't get the request from the city directly,
So
or the
what-
communication from the city.
Now, of course, this thing has been going on for years, so it would not seem that as soon as the owner got it, would he not then send it to the Smith
Well,
Agency because they're looking after the property?
The owner's dead.
I'm sorry?
The owner's dead.
No, but there's more than one owner.
Right, so you have to deal with the estate.
No, you don't have to deal with the state, you got 4 different owners.
They're the minority owners. The majority owner is the son of the deceased owner, and he's in Wyoming. He handles all of the affairs. I've talked to him once or twice.
So in theory, you were aware that the 2017 was not available?
No,
Because otherwise you would have put it in your calculation here.
Oh, well, that means I didn't have it in my possession, that's correct.
Either you didn't have it in your possession or you knew it wasn't available.
Oh, we don't go to that much trouble to say whether it's available or not. It wasn't in my possession.
Okay.
I have the previous years I'm looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so to confirm, the estate of Lois M. Fraser, the owner, that mailer would go to the son in Wyoming?
Yeah, well, I see it's addressed to Quebec, and I imagine she lived there at the time of her passing.
And then-
And there's someone to receive it, but the son's in it,
And then
controls the
there's
estate.
the second, there's a name Sparling that's received had a mailer too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oakville, I have a question. Laura Gardner's was sent to 2500 360 Main Street, so is that,
that's a lawyer's office.
yes,
That's Pittsburgh.
is it, or was that Aiken?
2500?
Yeah,
That's
what's-
25th floor.
Okay,
Spend too much time in that building.
okay, so,
Yeah, Aikens is 30th.
oh, okay.
So we have 3 people signing for the receipt of the request for
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, I think that we're not so much, we see that it was sent and received. What we're concerned about is what the city gave back, or what the city has as a receipt. Like, they said something came back, and we just wanna see it.
Yeah, okay, and Mr. Wong, your position is you looked at that, you kind of queried why there was saying receipt of a mailer, and you went and you viewed what was submitted and that it was completely blank.
Yes.
I'm
Was-
just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Let me just ask that one question. One went to Gardner, one went to Sparling, one went to the estate. The request, is that correct?
Yes.
So 3 of them went out on the same time, with the same date, to 3 different people, which were the owners. Do you happen to know which one, the one that came back with blank, who it
No,
came from?
no, I don't know. Like sometimes when they fill out their login IDs, it may or may not give an indication as to who submitted it.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a copy of the title with the addresses for service?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, that might help us too. I don't know who's on title, I didn't look it up.
Okay, all right, thank you both for coming back in. We'll call our recess again and consider this new information or clarification, and we'll make a decision right away. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the hearing back to order. Okay, the panel has discussed the matter and decided that there was non-compliance, so onus and reversal will be, so the onus is reversed and the applicant will proceed first.
We're gonna just ask for this to be confirmed, if that's okay.
Okay.
I just found out that there's a bigger backstory, and I don't have the documentation here, but the title was changed. The estate was taken off the title.
Okay,
So, and I don't have that information, so all due respect, I don't think I could show it to you. If I can't show it to you,
yeah, okay.
so we'll just get it confirmed.
Okay, so 217 Sherbrooke Avenue, the appellant is asking for confirmation at $1,218,000. You got that, Kenny? Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Neufeld. That concludes 217 Sherbrooke. Next property in the docket is 61 Furby Street. We're dealing with the 2020 assessment, realty assessment appeal. Mr. Wong, when you are ready, please.
Do you have a brief for me on this property?
I know.
Is this, are we missing any others, or just?
No, just this one.
Okay, we're gonna probably confirm this as well.
So 61 Furby Street. Mr. Wong, would you mind reading in for the record?
For sure.
And everything, thanks.
Actually, before we get there, regarding the previous property,
Yes.
is deferral kind of mentioned in the 54, in the confirmation? Or is it just?
Oh, it doesn't matter, because when you appeal it, it's, we start all over.
I mean, just for the record, I'm not sure if it's
Are
included
you
or
keeping
not.
score back home?
Huh?
Are you keeping score back home?
Well, I just wonder if I had to make a note in my system, or if it's gonna be recorded. Not sure. Okay, you know, I'll make a note in our system.
You know, we'll discuss it in camera, and then you'll look at the board order, and then you'll have your answer. How's that?
Okay, yeah.
All right. Okay, so 61 Furby Street.
I got it.
Mr. Wong?
Yeah. The subject property is 61 Furby. The roll number is 120-906-73000. Do you want me to go through the whole brief?
Yeah, just a quick summary.
Sure.
Yeah. Without everything, yeah.
Subject property is a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1929. We have an effective year built of 1945. It has 39 suites. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rent of $950 to get a potential income of $444,000. We used a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $433,000, and we used a 43% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $246,000. After 6.6%, we have an estimated market value of $3,740,000.
And just a summary of the value, please.
Sure. The market supports our, the rents, and I ask that you maintain the value at $3,740,000.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Neufeld, for the record, you're asking for confirmation?
That's correct.
Okay, and it's in absence of a brief, okay. Okay, that concludes 61 Furby Street. Next property on docket is 597 Broadway, and it's a 2020 Realty Appeal. Mr. Wong, when you are ready, please.
The subject property is 597 Broadway. The roll number is 120-912-685-00. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1917 to 1929. There are 40 suites with no outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $549 to get a potential income of $263,000. We used a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $256,000. And we used a 61% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $99,000. Capped at 6.6% for an estimated market value of $1,501,000, which is $38,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rent reviews are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is information on how we derived our cap rates. Page 6 are some cap rate sales to substantiate the accuracy of the model. Page 8 is a picture of the subject property with its location. Page 10 are the income and expenses submitted by the owner. You can see that they're on page 10, their income is $83,000. And on page 13, their income is negative $87,000. So their income is about $280,000. The model is estimated their income to be about $260,000. So it seems like the model is a little bit light in that area. Their expenses, they seem to be fluctuating a fair bit. The 61% that the model has used is on the higher end of the range, and I feel it's fair. And the cap rate that we've applied is in line with what's in the market. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $1,501,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor?
On the age of the property, you have 2 dates, and I'm just wondering, does that reflect the 2 different sections of the property, or is that, was there a change on the effective age in the books?
I believe it's sometimes different buildings get built at different times, and that's how we reflect it.
Yeah, okay, that seems about reasonable, I was just wondering. Any chance you've been in this building?
I have not.
Okay. And page 3 is all done by the model?
I believe so, yes.
You mentioned previous years being negative income, and obviously that's maintenance and repair. Did you investigate anything regarding that maintenance and repair?
I did not.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Marla, any questions?
No.
Robert?
Nothing of the assessor.
Thank you. I have no questions either. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. The previous years in the subject property, we had a bit of a miscommunication 2 years ago because the expenses were especially high. They were submitted, and I think the assessor's given you one page. They were all due to maintenance and repair category, and at the last hearing, the assessor said it was likely remodeled, and I didn't do my research enough. They weren't remodeled. A wall fell down and it had to be repaired. That's what the high costs were for. So after the hearing, we did appeal this property because that's not a renovation that will allow you to increase your revenue. That was a catastrophic repair cost. So that was repaired in 2016, so the numbers in 2017 represent a normalcy. You can see that the income came back up a bit and expenses dropped drastically. So we're using the higher income figure, and we're not going to average the expenses like we normally do, knowing that there was a one-time cost. So the actual performance was undisputedly $83,515, which does differ from the assessor's number by $16,000. The capitalization rate is based on many factors. This is outside the central business district, so the lack of parking is an issue. There's no parking. The mixes are a little skewered to bachelors and one bedrooms. It's a minor factor considering the predominant use in this building. Year built, I think that goes without saying that when your walls start falling, that the building is not just old, but it has some issues. And one has to, when this gets placed on the market for sale, a potential purchaser is going to establish a very high replacement reserve allowance on this site. You can do that in a couple of ways. One is to increase your repairs and maintenance figure, and the second way is to treat it with a higher capitalization rate. That's how the broker would adjust it. And in this case, as you can see, the unit expenses, maintenance repair in this particular year were $104,000 on 40 units, so approximately $2,500 per unit. So our option on this site was either increase that to $3,000 or so, or look at a higher cap rate. We chose cap rate, and we could have adjusted the reserve up for future repairs. But the reason we chose cap rate is because not only was that an expense, but you can see that it impacted financial performance as well. The other problem with this property is if you ever see a story in the newspaper or the radio or TV and there's a report of someone being shot or stabbed on West Broadway, chances are it happened in this building. There have been, I think it's 3 murders in the last 4 or 5 years in and around this building. It's just a high crime area, and so it's not one that an investor is going to be looking at as a high profile property. We haven't made a great allowance for it because I think we discussed it has physical problems and there are social problems, and in the marketplace it's going to have a less than aggressive cap rate. As to comparables that you would compare with this, it's rather difficult in that these types of properties are generally wouldn't hit the market, but on page 33 there's a row home on Sarah, and this is about 3 blocks south of the subject, and it was purchased, renovated. So we had two numbers, was 8.14% prior to renovation for the sale. Then what happened is that the owner put some money into it and then jacked the rents. His post-reno cap rate with his investment was 9.99%. That was a newer property and a triplex, and to be sensitive and fair, these are all social assistance housings, projects. Another one which we looked at, and although it's a different category, is on top of page 34. This is also a few blocks from the subject on north of Portage at Young. Now that is I didn't look in the house. I've heard one party tell me it was a rooming house and another one say that they had 8 self-contained units. But just safe to say that it was focused on social assistance housing, as our subject is. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Unified, you're asking for $1,078,000?
That's correct. And the previous year at 1433 is under appeal. And I anticipate that we're going to be able to review these numbers fairly now when we interpret the wall failure as a repair rather than a capital upgrade.
So there's a pending muni board?
Yes, that's
okay. Thank you.
And as with all municipal boards, I'm not comparing one against the other, saying, well, this board did that, this board did this. It's whatever happened in the 2 years prior.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wong, any questions?
So, in a sense, you're kind of stabilizing off, are you stabilizing off 1 year of performance?
Yeah, because it was the only one we had in the recent past that wasn't impacted by the repair cost.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Marla, any questions?
No.
Robert?
The only question I had was, when I looked at the losses of those particular years, I saw the repairs, and you covered that item, so I have no other questions.
Another thought is we could have averaged that over a longer period. It's difficult with this type of repair because it's a long-lived.
So huge.
It's a long-lived repair, so you may stabilize it over 20 years. We've chosen to disregard it.
Okay, thank you. And I have no questions. Any requirement for summary? Mr. Wong?
No.
Thank you. And Mr. Newfeld, you're good?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Next property in the docket is 765 Notre Dame Avenue, and we're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. Mr. Wong, when you're ready, please.
Just before we start, the two properties operate as one economic unit. They have separate titles, so there will be a fair amount of crossover of information.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're gonna treat that does that accelerate the processes too, or make it go slower?
No, that will accelerate it. We'll present everything for the first property, I guess, and then consider that evidence on the second one.
Okay.
Yeah. But we still have to go on the record.
Right, I know, I understand.
Separate.
I'm
Yeah.
just, yes.
Okay, we'll see. Mr. Wong, when you're ready, please. 765 Notre Dame Avenue.
Okay. The subject property is 765 Notre Dame Avenue. The roll number is 130-602-090-00. It's a residential apartment block that's 6 stories high, built in 1955, and has 81 suites with 40 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $615 for the 20 taxable portion. The gross potential is $332,000. We use a 3% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $322,000. And we use a 58% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $134,000. At the 5.3%, we have an estimated market value of $2,542,000, which is about $56,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, which shows that the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market. On the bottom of page 4 are some expense comparables showing that the expenses that the model is used is a little bit higher than market. On page 5 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 6 are some cap rate sales that substantiate the model, which range from 4% to 6%. On page 8 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 9 are the income and expenses submitted by the owner. On page 11 are the rents that are being charged for the property. $630, which supports the $615 that the model is assigned. On the last page are the CMHC rents, where an average one bedroom for the area is about $829. If I may, I'd like to provide a summary of the income and expenses that were submitted, because there's a lot to look at there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's okay, maybe just hand it down.
Oh, sure.
So if you go to page 9 of my brief, just the first page of the income and expenses. See on the revenues, on the very top of the page is $1,023,000, and that's what I have in my summary. And the very first line of the expenses is a summary of the expenses at $546,000. They had some other charges in there and expenses, which are like finance charges, amortization charges, which aren't typically included in estimating the operating income. And they didn't have any management, so adding back in the management expense. Their operating expense is about $396,000, and their net operating income is about $626,000. And on the bottom of the summary
Sorry,
page,
I thought you were handing out financial statements.
this is a summary of what's.
Well, this is opinion, I think we're just wasting our time with this, so you should have handed out, is this information?
Yeah. Go to page 9.
Okay, so why don't we just look at that instead?
Sure. If you go to page 9 on the top right, it says their revenue is $1,023,000. And I have the income at $1,023,000. And then a little bit below that is their expenses at $546,000. my information there, they had some finance charges, amortization charges, which they were applying, which I removed. They didn't have management, which I added, and they didn't have insurance. I could have added back insurance into the expenses, but I didn't really have a great way to estimate their insurance costs. But even without the insurance, this is what their operating income is, and on the bottom of the page, it splits out on the bottom chart on the right, it shows the
income 384.
yeah, it shows the income for 760, split out at 384,000, whereas the model has estimated 242,000. So it seems like the model is light based off of the information that was provided. Even if you don't include the insurance, which I really wasn't able to estimate. So it seems like the model is supported by market, and it's supported by some of the actual information that we have. And I ask that you maintain the assessed value, the total assessed value at $4,577,000.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Neufeld, any questions on the evidence?
Yes, so page 3, is this all model generated?
I believe so, yes.
And when there's a split in the classification here, do you have is each of these columns have separate inputs? Or is it divided on a prorated basis after the input of the data?
I think it is a little bit different, but it is the $615 is a blend of.
Well, no, but what I mean is it's partially exempt and partially taxable. So when you create this model, do you feed in all 81 units with your whatever data is required to generate the model, and then split it up by percentage based on taxable or not taxable? Or do you run two separate revenue streams and then add them together?
I believe it's two separate revenue streams that are kind of based off of the proportioning of the building, and I believe that's how it's done.
So if all 81 were in here, the number could be different according to your model, and then they were split up by their class. I'm just trying to understand how you did it.
I said, I believe that if say, the area of a building for the exempt portion kind of generates estimated rate, and then the area for the taxable portion would generate a particular.
Okay, so you flow
possible
down
rate.
from there, rather than doing one revenue stream and splitting it in half, or whatever the ratio was.
You know, I think that the case where the buildings are distinct, I think those distinct buildings feed the separate income streams. In this particular case, the buildings might not be distinct in terms of the exempt and taxable portion, so it might be just a division based off of the percentage of units that are exempt.
So, I mean, this is just a minor issue, I just want to know this for my own sake here, so nothing provocative, but I just want to understand that you use two separate revenue streams and add them together for value instead of one revenue stream where you separate for taxable versus non-taxable.
We use two, yes.
Okay. So the numbers could vary if you had done it the other direction.
We valued as if it was taxable, and because a certain number of the units are exempt, that's why we have two income
No, we
streams.
know why you have two streams, but all I was asking is if you had done, say, one stream, and then at the bottom, with all 81 units, the total numbers may not necessarily equal the sum of the two streams. Is that fair?
I would have, I don't know for sure. I would have to look into it to double check, but in terms of an overall rate, it's $615 for the whole building.
Now, what's being valued here? What interest in the property is being valued? The fee simple
Fee
value,
simple?
right? as though unencumbered,
Mhm.
and we're dealing with, the primary thing you value are the rights with the property, is that correct?
Fee simple,
The
value.
rights that the property has, it's not.
Market fee simple value.
Yeah, okay. Then you are aware that both in appraisal theory and case law in the province, Manitoba and Government of Canada, that the concept of property rights includes encumbrances put on a property, whether it be by zoning, what are the four: police, as cheat, taxation, and something else? That these rights are impacted?
I'm not totally sure. If you wanted to clarify, you could.
That's fine, if you don't know, that, sure, and if I didn't explain it right, we'll move on. Have you inspected these sites?
I've been in them.
And, so you're aware that they're use restricted?
It's, yeah, I believe. It's only available to students of HSC or University of Manitoba.
Okay. So it's not open to the market, and, and the zoning would also indicate that, that's a different style of zoning, is it not? Educational, institutional?
It appears it is educational institutional.
A typical apartment block will be in an RMF zoning, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, did you review the zoning bylaw regarding E&I zoning?
No.
Now, on page 4, your market comparables general, question on rents and expenses, are any of these student housing?
I believe they're standard apartment building.
Does your assessment department parameters, models have a distinction for student housing?
I don't believe so.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Marla, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Robert?
Not right now, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wong, I'm looking on page.
Oh, yes, I do have,
Okay, go ahead.
sorry. If you go to page 3, York.
Yeah.
If I take 81 times 615.96.
Yeah.
I do not get to the total of these two, 20T and 20E, which comes to 598.
Really? I would expect them to be equal.
But multiply 615 by 96 times 81 gets 498,927.
What did you get?
498,927. And when I add up the two, 332 and 266, it comes to 598,000. I'm just wondering,
Yeah, I think it adds up.
it does?
Like, the 615.96 comes out to.
Oh, I see, then I gotta multiply it by 12, sorry.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
where I went wrong.
Okay.
Okay, apologize.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, page 3 again. So how do you do that split between 20T and 20E? Is it like 45 units are assigned to 20T, 36 or to 20E, something like that?
I would have to double check, but there's a certain number of units that are assigned to,
Yeah.
I guess, the med students.
Okay, so
And-
somebody's done an
Yeah,
inspection
it-
and established
Yeah,
how many are assigned, and
Yeah.
There to students and they're for exam? Okay. Yeah, that's my only question. Okay. Thank you. And this is only for 765 Notre Dame?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. All right, that's my only question. Mr. Neufeld, when you're ready, I guess we're dealing with the portion on 765 Notre Dame, I'm not, okay.
Properties were built in 1953 and 54, speaking about both, as originally they were called nurses' residence. That's back when primary nursing training was done at HSC. That changed slightly with the University of Manitoba, who joined their faculty with HSC. And then this building was repurposed mostly for undergrad medical students. And for doctors who are taking their postgraduate training, their post-undergraduate training, whatever, and had to be at the hospital for courses and residency. In 1971, the province passed a law, and it's in the Municipal Assessment Act in section, 22, saying that all undergraduate medical students and who live in this block, their premises will be fully exempt from taxation. In 2003, I was asked to work for the HSC, and we spotted this, and we took about 3-4 years to finally sort this all out, which required us to count all the units, interview every resident, interview their deans, and get the dean's approval that they were undergraduate medical students. And in some cases, we had to go to the faculties to make sure that there was a medical related field. Obviously, the doctors were easy, dentists were easy, nurses were easy, but then we got into perfusionism and all sorts of other medical related rehab. But we did end up on a unit by unit basis. And then with the city, we came to an agreement that these were the numbers that we were going to use for exemption on a per unit basis. And if either party wants to change them, they can, at their own expense, go to the trouble of doing a recanvassing on the same basis, which means going door to door, interviewing the student, getting their student number, and going to the faculties and getting it verified. Obviously, no one's going to bother to do that now because it's a very big job. At the time, it was a massive change, and it was justifiable. Now, what the HSC has decided to do is they've improved these numbers slightly, but we're just going to live with them for now. And of course, when we do decide to request a change in it, I'm sure everyone's going to forget about the past agreement, but that's life. I'm telling you this so you understand the background on it. So we're not requesting a change in the percentage. It's all based on the number of units that are undergraduate students in the medical professions. And so if you looked at the ratio and you wanted to get a mathematical formula, you could be sure that the denominator would be 81. And I forget the exact number in this case. Now, because it's operated by HSC for this purpose, it's also run by them. It's managed by them. Everything is provided by them. All the maintenance is supplied by HSC. The heat is supplied by the steam plant next door. And you can see in the statements that they get a bill for the steam heat, an internal bill. So the costs are an approximation of their share of certain things. And there's a lot of things that aren't listed in there. And the assessor was fairly pointed out that insurance wasn't in there. Because I don't know if hospitals carry insurance for this, or just the government says we're insuring everything. But I think the exercise is informational but not pertinent because we're using the same NOI, and that's not a coincidence. It's simply because we've been working on this project together for 16 years. So the only thing at dispute here is the rate of capitalization, and the background on it is important. The site has a restriction to usage, which is a restriction on the value of it. It has to be taken into account. And that is, it's only to be used by undergraduate medical, it can be used by students at, who are being taught at HSC. The exemption only applies to those in the undergraduate fields. So there are a number of postgraduate students in this building. Predominantly, they're have received their medical degrees in other countries, and they're trying to get an equivalency in Canada. That's the biggest other user. There were some ex-employees in there on compassionate ground, and because the long-standing employee, and they allowed them to live there. You or I, if we wanted to live there, I don't know why we'd want to live there, but we couldn't. That's a title right. Now, the next issue is the zoning. It's E&I zoning, and on pages 6 to 11 are the bulk zoning table that's in effect. And on principal use on page 6 as a dwelling, the EI zoning does not permit any a live-work situation. It doesn't permit single-family or two-family or mobile homes. It does permit multifamily, so we are a legal use. But it doesn't permit most of the other uses that are permitted in RM zonings and in R zonings. And that's the columns immediately preceding that. And you look down the table as to what's permitted and not permitted in EI, it's educational and institutional. So schools and hospitals, that's what it was created for. So as an accessory, it's an accessory use to the hospital. So it really couldn't be marketed. So we're actually have to employ a hypothetical assumption that it could be marketed with these assumptions, and then carry on. The parking is extremely limited. It's comprised of the parking directly underneath the property. This parking is very inadequate for the use because we're generally dealing with, on the 2-bedroom units, it'll be 2 residents, a single bedroom, oftentimes 2. On the bachelors, there are several bachelor units that have 2 residents in them, and by being residents, they could be doctors in training, that sort of thing. They all have vehicles. Now, there is overflow parking available in the HSC parkades, but on its own, it's well below its needs. The revenue growth is not possible because its rents are restricted and controlled by HSC. The rents are very much below market, and they don't have the opportunity of going up, and that's the key. Other places you could look for a bump on, get an increase, residential tenancies branches, for example. On this site, it doesn't. It goes through the HSC, through their control. Average rent is $597 per unit, which is spawned a growth industry around the HSC. There are several apartments that have been converted within walking distance at higher rents than this. So what we've done is we've just capitalized the entire stream at 7% and then split it back out to the same ratios that were in existence before. So the exempt portion is $1,540,000 and the taxable portion $1,925,000. Total is $3,465,000. That compares to last year's assessment, which was a total of $2,991,000. The previous year's assessment in 2016 is $3.8 million. It's under appeal, and we've had some offers of reduction that equate it very close to 2018's number in case management. 2014 was recently settled in case management at $2,264,000. In 2012 was $1,837,000. So when boards I know have a reluctance to look at values that are below or above, or significantly below last year's number. The point is, in complicated properties, sometimes it takes a few decades to sort things out, and we are sorting them out. They will be consistent, 1.8, 2.2, around 2.7, 2.9, and the final year at 3.4.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Wong, any questions?
So I guess in your workup, you're kind of saying that the assessment and taxation department has everything right except for the cap rate?
You give yourself too much credit. No, I mean, my ultimate decision on this was that we had an artificial statement that's based on a user's needs as dictated by legislation, and we had two alternatives. One was to go out and create something from a similar market, looking at educational, institutional, or review the assessment departments and deem if they were within our range, and we chose the latter.
Could you have gone to the market for an apartment building, which is what you're referring to it as?
To my mind, there are very few units that would be comparable. There's and I don't even know if it's still in existence, but there's a nurse's residence on Sherbrooke. There's a building under construction on Pembina Highway, but that's all open market, that's for students. There's dormitories at the U of M, and the U of W has their dorm and their buildings. I would have been looking at buildings like that. There's in more rural locations, there are work camps and employees' quarters. If you have a remote hotel, or I was just at one in some desert somewhere, and they bring in the employees, they work for 6 weeks, they get 2 weeks off, that sort of thing, and then they get their wages docked for room and board. That's what we would be looking at.
Oh, okay. That would be all my questions.
Thank you. Marla, any questions?
No questions.
Robert?
No questions.
Okay. Thank you. And I have no questions either. Okay, so that requirements or summary from either party. I think we've got a clear picture here. Okay, that concludes 765 Notre Dame. Actually, I did, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Neufeld. I guess regarding this summary of statement on, that the assessor had provided, is this for both buildings, or is this just for?
Oh, that's both. That's
That is-
comprehensive.
that
You
is-
can see it's split out at the bottom into 765
Oh,
Notre
okay.
Dame and
I
to
see.
Emily.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I see it now.
Yeah.
All right, perfect, so we'll use it in the next, the
Yeah,
Emily
yeah.
1, 2. Okay, perfect, thanks. So that concludes 765 Notre Dame, and I'll keep that aside.
I should ask for the penalty of the assessor for providing a combined statement.
Yeah.
That's a border revision joke.
It's not much lines.
So to revise my brief.
Yeah. Okay, so we need this, we need a copy of this for to Emily also, right?
Yeah.
I guess you're gonna use it, so we're gonna have to duplicate this one for the next.
I can just make a copy.
Yeah, okay. I wrote on mine, sorry.
Mine's clean. You can have it.
Okay.
Okay, so last property is 2 Emily Street, and we're dealing with a 2020 realty assessment. And Mr. Wong, when you are ready, please.
Okay, the subject property is 2 Emily Street. The roll number is 130-602-06100. It's a residential apartment block that's 6 stories high. It's built in 1954 and has 51 suites with 12 outdoor parking stalls. Page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $506 to get a potential income for the class code 20T of $157,000. We use a 3% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $153,000. And we use a 61% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $58,000. Capped at 5.3%, we have an estimated market value of $1,109,000 for the class code 20, which is approximately $42,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market. On the bottom of page 4 are some expense comparables, showing that the expenses we use are supported by the market. On page 5 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 6 are some cap rate sales. Page 8 are some pictures of the subject property with its location. Actually, this brief is pretty much exactly the same as the previous property, so.
Okay. And this is entered as evidence of the summary of the income and expense, okay. All right. Mr. Neufeld, any questions of the assessor's evidence?
No.
Okay, thank you. Marla, any questions?
No.
Robert?
No.
Thank you. So, Mr. Neufeld, when you are ready, please.
Yeah, nothing really new to add. Just same connected building. They are actually separated by a firewall, and they each have their own set of elevators, or elevator. And the unit mixes are slightly different. This one being all one bedrooms. The previous one with the large suite was a caretaker suite, originally designed for, but they took it off, that off-site, and then turned it into a rental unit a few years ago.
The entrances are different too.
Yeah, that's right, they each have their own entrance elevator shaft, yeah. And, gotta remember, do they share that laundry room?
I don't think so.
I think they have a shared laundry, oh, the laundry room is in one building, I think, and one building's just got the shaft, and then they share the laundry room. My last tour in there was a few years ago. The history on this property is interesting in that it follows the same pattern as the other property. Going back to 2010, and I have all the assessments, but in the last 3 years, for example, 2014 was $1,457,000. 2016 was 1,697, which we appealed. 2018, I'm only bringing this up because I think it was a funny decision. The board reduced it from 1,844 to 1,697, which was the previous year's assessment. And I just said, you bunch of chickens, just didn't want to go underneath the previous year's assessment because it was under appeal. You know, that's just a fact, a reality of the way people make decisions, and I understand it, and I'm laughing about it. But we did not appeal 1,697 from last year because it was close enough. So this year we're at 1,647, and that's why we want a slightly lower number, just because the board 2 years ago were chickens. No one here from here sat on it, so that's why I can say that. I know Mr. Hutchins is thinking this.
I already checked.
And the truth is, it wasn't very far off the number we were looking for. And it's the same split, 808 exempt, 840 taxable. This property does underperform the other one, and
generally on a per unit basis, and that's, I guess, probably to do with the mix. I'm not entirely sure, but it's always underperformed it. Thank you.
Thank you. What total do you have there, Mr. Neufeld?
1,647, 1,647,000. Oh, sorry, 648, I rounded, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah,
648.
648, okay. Okay,
Taxable's 840.
Correct.
yeah, okay. Thank you. Mr. Wong, any questions of the appellant?
No.
Okay, Marla, any questions?
Is there, can you walk from one to the other, or do you have to
No,
go
there's-
outside to
Yeah, you
get-
got, I think, yeah, there's a firewall separation between them.
So if there's
Brick.
laundry in the other one, they have to, from Emily, you have to actually go physically outside with your laundry?
I don't think the laundry is shared.
Okay, it's on the first floor.
It's in the basement, on Emily.
No, it's on the first
Oh,
floor.
I know why you've been doing your laundry in a nurse's residence.
I met many people there. I lived there.
Okay, all right. You know, they left your curtains there, you know, those bead separators?
Yeah, I
They're
know, I was
still
wondering
there.
where they were.
Yeah. I gotta think about that, there's, on the laundry. I have pictures predating it, I take your word for it then.
It just makes sense to have it in each building.
Yeah, I thought it was the first floor though.
No, it's in the basement.
Is there a basement? Okay. The basement hooks up to the steam system somewhere.
At least that's where my wife went.
Yeah, oh, I know, I'm looking at the first floor, because that's where the big unit was, yeah, okay.
Answer your question.
No, but that's okay. Okay.
So if there was a party in one room, you had to go outside and in the other one to go to the party. That's the real problem.
Robert, any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay,
It just brought back memories, that's all.
yeah, good ones, I hope.
You did.
Okay. And I have no questions, so any requirement for summary?
Sure,
So on.
just I guess quickly to say that the rents that we've used are supported by the market and actually maybe mostly lower than what they actually collect. So the rents and expenses that we've used are reflective of a below average apartment building, and the cap rate that we use is supported by the market, and I have to maintain the assessed values for 765 Notre Dame and for 2 Emily.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Restricted usage, restricted title rights, and it is what it is. On the market, it couldn't be sold and converted, so there's no upside on this. There's a very long history of dealing with the assessment department on it, and generally a good level of cooperation in working with the assessors. There have been years where we've had to file appeals, but they've all been resolved amicably. It means without a hearing at municipal board. The 14 was outstanding, it was dealt with fairly, parties came to an agreement. I believe 16 is still outstanding, however, there's an understanding of what those numbers will be when the case gets called, and we've been entirely consistent. And probably focus more so on our total number rather than a number per side, because we don't care, they're the same ownership. You can see that 765's numbers are higher than 2 Emily's numbers.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you both for appearing. That concludes our hearing today.